passe l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De er i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone and welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. We're back with a nondescript episode. We're going to talk through a bunch of things for various amount of time and we'll see how it goes. How about that? What a teaser. Yeah, that's pretty fitting. It's Chris O'Reilly here with Brian Campion, first introduced. Brian, how are you?
We're always a bit nondescript anyway, aren't we? Not too bad now, not too bad. You're come off a bit of a marathon talking session today, coming off the spin earlier today, so fair play to you, coming on so late at night. For the cause, you know.
A pizza on the way, so I may have to stop recording at some point to pick that up. Tough times when you don't have time to cook for yourself in the evening. Go from one handball broadcast to another. But this is what it's all about. This one is the main one. And Alex Kulesh is here as well. How you doing, Alex?
I'm pretty good, Chris. I'm back from a nice holiday, nice and rested. So, well, actually not very rested. I was skiing and I was pretty bad at skiing. So it takes a lot of energy.
Was that your first time skiing?
Second time, but
Okay.
the first time was a disaster. That was 2 days and I didn't know how to stop. So that didn't go too well. This time around actually it was pretty good. The full week did me a lot of good. I was on the blacks by the end of the week, so
Really?
happy with that.
Oh my God. Happy days.
Some of the blacks.
Some people don't know what that means. That's the most advanced part of the skiing course, yeah.
Yes.
Just to be clear.
Yeah. That's important. Okay, yeah, so no broken limbs, no torn ligaments, no shoulders dislocated. All good?
All good. Actually, did my knees some good because it's straightening my knees. That's the problem. So you do the opposite of that in skiing. So it actually loosened them up a bit. It was perfect. Feel better now.
Oh, Alex and his loose knees. All right, happy days. Could be the...
Loose knee coolish. Loose knee coolish.
We're going to pop through a few of the competitions that have been happening recently. Let's start at the top, the EHF Champions League men. Alex, what's been on your mind?
It's been good. The Champions League on the men's side. It's kind of really jumped back into it after World Championship. We've had 2 rounds since our last episode. A few shocks here and there, but a lot of it's nice to see that both groups are completely open going into the last 2 rounds of the Champions League group stage. So there is only one team that is eliminated, and that is poor Elverum, who just weren't at the races this time around, even though they actually put it up to Nantes really well and were leading for most of the game, but lost 42-36. But other than that, every team is still in it. Even Porto, who looked terrible, actually still have a chance. They have a game in hand. Why did that game against Zagreb get postponed?
Zagreb, they had problems with their flight and couldn't make it, and they then wouldn't have made it on time for the game, so they had to postpone it. I think it might have something to do with some sort of strike or something, but it was definitely an issue with their flight.
Okay.
It's such a Zagreb issue.
Yeah, paid some pilot off to say that the engine wasn't working on the plane, because they weren't quite ready for the game. But a game I was at, which I was very impressive. That you remember the last time I went to Magdeburg and I had the lovely situation with the taxi man. Didn't see him again this time, unfortunately. I was looking out for him. I purposely went down the whole taxi rank hoping I'd see him again, but didn't run into him. But the last time I was in Magdeburg, I witnessed Magdeburg get absolutely spanked by PSG, and safe to say, their 32-25 win over Veszprém, they look like a completely different team in person, because just going on. Also, the atmosphere in the arena was really, really good. And you have to say, Kai Smits, when you think back to when we interviewed him before the Euro and people didn't know who he really was and how much he's established himself as an absolute baller. He is becoming, and he needed to become as well, an absolute motor for this Magdeburg team. And he really showed up and scored some really, really important goals in the second half. And his goals in the second half really kind of put Veszprém to bed. Not literally, but metaphorically to bed. And Veszprém just kind of felt like they kind of lost their mojo in the second half, kind of just faded away. And I'm not quite saying it's worrying times for Veszprém, because they do have Nedim Malik coming in. He's not going to be able to play though until the knockout rounds. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think you're right. Yeah,
and I think he'll be a big morale boost when he does come in, because he does offer a lot, obviously, from the right back position, which they did obviously do struggle with now with their Egyptian star out missing.
Yaya Omar.
Yaya Omar, that's him.
I can't believe of all the players whose name you've forgotten, it's the man who for 5 years in a row you were touting as the next big thing, and friend of the podcast, Yaya Omar.
I forgot how old I was the other day, so it's a very common occurrence to me. So don't take offense to it, Yaya. I had to quickly add up how old I was.
Kai Smits has been a revelation, but a revelation that we all knew. We knew that was going to happen. Anytime he got a chance to play, he did this. He did this for Netherlands. He's averaged 8.2 goals per game since Magnussen's injury. It's insane. He got 12 on the weekend in Bundesliga as well. He's just banging them in, and he's just he's a machine. Magdeburg are probably, they had to make a decision. Magnussen or Smits, one of them had to go, but Smits going to Flensburg next season is going to be a big boost to them, I think. And Magdeburg, with that win over Veszprém, actually leapfrogged them in the standings. So right now, Magdeburg are in second place on 16 points. PSG are top with 20, and they seem like they'll take that top spot. Veszprém now down in third place on 60 points as well, but a slightly worse goal difference. And, it makes a lot of difference, that automatic qualification for the quarterfinal, and then kind of setting up a much easier route towards the final four. So Magdeburg were a team that we talked about as, they're underperforming a little bit in the Champions League. What's going on? And they got two huge injuries, Magnussen and Saugstrup, but they've jumped right back in. They signed Oscar Bergendahl, which I think was a huge, huge coup for them. I think he's really a direct replacement for Saugstrup as you can get. And if anything, he bolsters their defense. Since Magdeburg's defense isn't necessarily the best, they do rely on high scoring, high paced games. Oscar Bergendahl comes in as an extra rock in that defense. And they're looking pretty good. So they have Zagreb in the next game, while Veszprém play Porto. So should be two relatively easy wins for those two teams. But then it's Magdeburg have Bucuresti in the last round, while Veszprém will have to beat PSG to qualify. So that puts Magdeburg in a really good position in that group. And that's even despite the fact that they lost their players and lost to Wisla Plock in the round before out of nowhere. So I think looking good for Magdeburg.
And I think it's going to be Porto's cup final though, so I wouldn't completely count Porto just out yet. I think they have a slight boost coming in after that World Championship, where they seem to lost form beforehand, but seem to be playing slightly better this time or this side of the World Championship. So it is going to be interesting to see that, because Porto really have their backs against the wall and they need to win, whereas Veszprém seem to be in a bit of a slump. So it's definitely very interesting stuff.
Can I just mention on the Magdeburg thing? Remember when we did the midterm reports, right? Just before Christmas, and we had Magdeburg as, Brian, you had them as a C+, Alex a C, and I had them on a B-. And now it looks like they're going straight through to the quarterfinals, despite losing two of their best players.
I think that speaks more about Veszprém's drop in form than okay, Magdeburg have been good, but Veszprem have looked really lost without a right back. And Zoran Ilic, he's young, he's talented, but he's not at the level. I think Remili definitely fills that gap in a fantastic way. It'll be perfect for them, I think. But they might have to go through a playoff and then face one of the top teams in the quarterfinals. So, and they are coming up. If they do go into a playoff, they'll likely play Barca or Kielce in that other quarterfinal. So, yeah, it could be a tough road for Veszprem.
Not only that, but you have to look at the potential playoff match for them as well. If they finish third in the group, then they'll face sixth in the other group. At the moment, it's Aalborg, but it could, and that would be maybe even a bigger pain in the arse for them, could be Szeged. And we know, no matter how bad Szeged are, they find a way to beat Veszprem.
Yeah, and especially now.
Yeah, they beat Kiel, right? Yeah. That's 36-33 against Kiel. That was, again, kind of out of nowhere.
It's a classic Kiel result, I would say, at this point. The way they've played the Champions League this season, that's not a huge surprise happening for them. But yeah, another big step forward for Szeged, considering I saw them the week previous where they were beaten by Aalborg and pretty comfortably beaten as well. They looked like they didn't really have much to show, but yeah, the next week they come out and beat Kiel. Is there anything else on Group A you want to talk about before we talk about those teams in Group B? GOG?
GOG, we'll talk about them a little bit later as well after their Danish Cup final win. But yeah, GOG are just leave it for a little bit. They beat Veszprem in round 11. That was a pretty incredible performance, and yeah, again, I'll gush over them a lot more, but Emil Madsen, who is Denmark's 5th best right back, behind Gisel, Kirkelucke, Jakob Lassen and Mads Hoxer, doesn't even get a sniff at the second Danish team that was announced for the Euro Cup. He's the 4th top scorer in the Champions League with 70 goals, and he scored 8 from 8 in that game against Veszprem. Veszprem looked, again, when Veszprem go into we rely on Peter Nenadic mode, it just gets ugly. So I think they need to get Remili in there as soon as possible. But we will speak about GOG a bit later.
I don't want to keep talking about the Veszprem Magdeburg game, but when you're in the arena, it does feel a little bit different to see what you're watching sometimes as well. And one thing which I really noticed was how nimble the Magdeburg backcourt looked and how cumbersome some of the Veszprem players looked. And Peter Nenadic, one of them, sometimes it looks like he just learned how to run or something. I don't know. It was really bizarre sometimes, and you're just looking at him sometimes thinking this is one of our top athletes, but he somehow managed to get it done. Also, Manuel Strelec looked like he had a hip replacement the way he was running up the court. I mean, I think it's exaggerated because you're playing against probably one of the most mobile teams in world handball in Magdeburg, how quickly and how nimble they play. But it was interesting to see in person how I was coming away from it thinking, yeah, these Veszprem guys look a little bit slow. But Szeged back to life with that win against Kiel. They lost to Aalborg, so I don't know if I fully believe it. The win against Kiel, again, I would, as you said, Chris, put it down to more Kiel being bad and Niklas Landin being bad. So it seems like when Landin has had quite a lot of games where he just doesn't show up this season. And I think that kind of mirrors Kiel's form in the Champions League. He had 0 saves from 13 shots, didn't play the game after that. And yeah, without Landin, Kiel they seem very beatable. And yeah, I don't really think it was an outstanding game from Szeged in a sense. It was
was a nice balanced game at least. And our boy Miklas Rosta, budget Banhidi, is becoming the real life Banhidi. He is. It's like he's had a glow up. He's still very young. He's booked himself a move to Dino Bucharest next season as well. But he was very good in that game. 5 goals for him. But do you see Szeged doing anything in this competition? Do you see this kind of, okay, we're Szeged, we're actually good enough, so we'll win the important games?
If they do end up finishing 6th in the group and then face Veszprem in the playoff, then yes, I do see them managing it. Yeah, look, I think with them, it's so hard to know whether they are, the real deal after a result like this. It's a really good sign, and seeing players like Borat Machkovchik, all of a sudden shooting as well. One of the goals he scored was incredible, and it was like a blast from the past. But they have the tools they need now. They have the squad to play their certain style of handball, which still is very much, it's going to be speedy playmaker and then big boys shooting in the backcourt. That's not going to change. It's whether it works on a given day, which is important. I think the key thing is the line players for them. It didn't work against Aalborg in the game that I saw, but now Benson Banhidi scoring 3 from 3 on the line, Miklas Rosta scoring 5. And yeah, talked about Rosta. He was great in the World Championship as well. Another one of those line players who is taking penalties these days. Although the last penalty he took at the World Championship, he smacked a keeper straight in the face and got a direct red card in the first couple of minutes. So maybe he'll never do that again. But maybe that's the end of that. But yeah, when they have those players fully fit and in seemingly good form, then the tools are there, because the key thing missing for them was having the line players fit and able, because that's a big part missing for them in the way they play the attack. With them there, anything's possible. The last dance for a lot of these Szeged players before the Dushabayevs take over and change things around, and Juan Carlos Pastor leaves at the end of the season.
Should we talk a bit about Group B and probably the most disappointing result of the whole season so far? Of course, I'm talking about Celje losing to Barcelona after being 15-12 up at half-time. And of course, only one man was going to step up and save Barcelona. And it was almost so predictable in the end, with Dike Mem scoring 2 of the last 3 goals. I mean, that really stings for Celje, because they have something about them this season, don't they? They've pulled off some good results and they've pushed teams a lot. But that would have been really sensational had they toppled Barca at home. And I think we need to put some respect on Gal Marguch's name, the less famous brother of Gaspar Marguch. He's scored 8 out of 11. Okay, 3 only from play, but with Paris de Vargas in goal and the likes of the Barcelona keepers, I think you need to put some respect in his name. Don't be laughing, guys. I can see you're laughing there. Alex Villa was throwing shots out like they were going out of fashion, 4 from 10. Maybe not the best game, but to be expected against Barcelona. But yeah, I think Dike Mem really stole all the headlines with that win in the end.
Yeah, Celje just collapsed. It was so sad. And it was just, Barca are just used to winning. And they did it again. Celje were 27-24 up with 10 minutes to go. And Alex Vla, who's become a superstar, he's now signed for Aalborg. Interesting signing that I wasn't quite expecting Vla to land there. That we'll really be able to see if it's kind of a flash in a pan season or whether he's the real deal. But it does look like he's the real deal. But they kind of shot themselves, Celje. Like, what can you say?
What do you expect, though? Of course, it's against Barca.
Victory in their hands, and it just slipped through. And it was Dike Mem, and it was great seeing Dike Mem do that, because Brian, you say that it could only be one man, but Dike Mem he's not the most clutch player in the world. He's an incredible player, but I still call him Mr. Clutch.
Here we go again. I've heard this before.
But he's doing it more and more. I think he's
better. I think he's turned into a pretty good. I mean, he's not Alex Tusurbayev, but I think he's if you're going to pick out 3 players from the Barca team who are a bit clutch, it'd probably be him, Pérez de Vargas, and Alexi Gomez, no?
I'd throw Fabregas in there as well.
Do you think Fabregas is more clutch than DKM? I don't know.
Oh, he scored a winning penalty in the Champions League final last season.
Yeah, but Jesus, penalties.
But I think it's more so that ending of the game was pretty chaotic, and it allowed it played into DKM's strengths because he could receive the ball when the defense wasn't set fully. It was in kind of second wave transition or just as the defense set. And he just sliced through them with his 2 goals. It was, you look at that and you're like, how do you not just do this all the time? It looks so easy. Why aren't you scoring 15 goals a game? But what DKM struggles with is a fully set defense, a slowed down game in those last moments when there's kind of 2 big defenders in the middle and a goalkeeper that's ready for his shots. That's a bit more difficult, but he didn't need to do that. He was able to slice through. So I think there's still room to grow for DKM in the clutch area, but he's still a fantastic player. It's heartbreaking for Celje, just heartbreaking. And it did pretty much knock them out of the competition. They're on 6 points. They've got 2 games left, and Aalborg are on 9 points. So Celje have to win both of their last games, and Aalborg have to lose both of them pretty much for Celje to get through, which is unlikely. But
yeah,
Celje have just been almost a great team this year. But what do you expect?
Yeah, Aalborg facing Elverum at home next, so that should do it. But if somehow they don't, then it's Celje at home against Aalborg in the final game. So could all still change, nice. But they would need a huge favour from Elverum for that one. Nantes doing non-things as unpredictable as ever. Starting the new year with a loss at home to Celje and then scoring 42 goals away against Elverum. I just love it's a good time. Every time you see Nantes, you never know what you're going to get exactly, particularly in Europe. It's just fun to watch, as long as you don't really care whether they win or lose.
They struggled against Elverum. They did score 42 goals, but they were 6 goals down at one stage in the first half. They did storm back and won that first half, 21-18. But Aymeric Meen is back for them, which is just fantastic for them. But I wonder if they're still getting used to having him back in the team. Kind of their alpha dog, which he became before his injury. They kind of, okay, we have to give him the ball and we have to work with him. So maybe it's a little bit of that. Maybe it's Meen getting into form a little bit. But they're pretty solid in that 3rd place. They have no chance of getting ahead of Kielce or Barcelona. But I think 3rd place in that group is pretty nice because you end up playing Zagreb or Plock. And that's pretty straightforward. If you're in 4th or 5th, which Kiel and Szeged and maybe even Aalborg are fighting for, you might face up against GOG or Dinamo Bucharest, much harder challenges. So still a lot to play for in that group as well. I think the placements do make a difference. Yeah,
it's really worth finishing in 3rd place in that group, with the playoff match you mentioned. And then, of all the teams you can face in the quarterfinal, whether you have a choice of PSG, Nantes wouldn't want that. Barca, they don't want that. Kielce, they don't want that. Magdeburg, they would think, okay, that's something we're used to in the European League as well. So, I think of all those teams, they'd probably fancy that route to go. So 3rd place, very much worth earning. Your question, Brian?
Is Alexander Cavalcanti Portugal's most informed player at the moment? That wasn't the question, but this is another question I just have. What do you think? He's kind of really come into his own this season, isn't he? It seems like.
He's been very good, but it was very strange that he didn't play that much for Portugal.
Yeah.
A Portugal team that was in form and has a lot of very good left backs.
But he wasn't selected, was he? He wasn't even at the World Championship.
He was, yeah. He was just bench warmer.
Okay.
Literally sat in his arse for the whole time. That really surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's been brilliant this season. And
he also got a red card against Elverum. So
yeah, 7 goals and red cards a good game though. That's a nice
you
little.
really filled the stat sheet. You really did.
Yeah. Pack it out, like, you know. Adrian Shipper shit. Actually, he wouldn't score 7 goals though, would he?
Yeah. You've forgotten your question.
No, I still have the question. So was there 2 games left? Do you feel like it's a hell of a lot of games just to get rid of 2 teams?
Yes.
What's your gut feeling? Or do you feel like it's been just about right?
Maybe it's a little... it's 2 games left and it does feel open. But a lot of things can close next week, basically, or this week, with the penultimate round. Pretty much everything could be set apart from a few placement ones, which does feel a little bit anticlimactic. Something we have to get used to, I suppose.
You say this format is like 4 years old.
No, I still know we haven't talked about it before, and I think that I don't mind all of the games. I just think the playoffs should be more games. There should be more important games before the Final Four to justify all of this build-up. So then positioning really matters. You know, it's more NBA style. That's fair. But the fact that, you know, the top teams qualify and they get one home game in the playoff, that where, you know, Barcelona, they're going to win the group and have one fantastic game where they'll pack out the Palau. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a real event. And then that's all they get from this Champions League that's been on for a season and they've played so many games. Then they get the Final Four in Cologne, which is its own event. That's fantastic. But you got to give, you know, maybe give teams home advantage, play 3 legs for the playoffs and the quarterfinals. So you really get these really high value games, get a lot more of them. That becomes a spectacle because, as you said, it does kind of peter down. And then we get a few of these fantastic games that are just to the death, and then it's done.
Because you do feel for the teams a little bit who would finish top of their group and then somehow mess it up in the quarterfinal and get knocked out. And you think, you had all that slog at the season, and then you just have 1 bad quarter, or 2 bad games overall, and then that's it then. Whereas you maybe had a few more knockout matches in the lead up to that. Yeah, it might feel like it has a bit more worth to it, but yeah. What do you think, Chris? Are we scrapping the whole thing?
I just think, like, if you use the example of like the 3 legs for Barca, right? Let's say they're facing GOG in the quarterfinal, they won't need a 3rd game, so it doesn't really matter. They'll win the 2 games anyway. But in some cases it's I think a bit more relevant, and it would be nicer to have more knockout games, because I had a similar thought today, because the next game in this competition I'll be commentating will be the knockout rounds, and then I've only got like 2 of those, and then it's over. It's Cologne. But then you need more teams in the competition. Yeah. And that's a whole other discussion, which we've done many times.
They love it, though. They love it.
We'll save that for the summer, maybe, when we have the group phase draw.
But I would say keep the same amount of teams, then just they all go through to the playoffs, and you get the benefit of finishing towards the top is that you get 2 home games if it comes to that. All the way through.
Could you imagine that people would be so irritated if everyone goes through?
Yeah.
No, because I'm pretty sure when that happened with the COVID season, and they put everyone through, and then we got pissed off because Zagreb were there, and then they couldn't even fulfill the fixture against Flensburg because of COVID. Yeah.
Maybe you put No, I'm overcooking this, over egging the pudding. I was like, I'll put the first team all the way through, then the bottom two teams play against each other to be able to play that team. So you still get one team knocked out, then you get an extra knockout game between the worst teams.
An extra knockout game between Elverum and Zagreb. That's what we need.
I think if you finish top of your group, you get a mystery player for the knockout round. So you don't know who it is. You get this mystery box player who's drafted in. A player who maybe retired maybe 1 or 2 years ago and they get drafted in.
Kim Anderson? Whoa!
And if you're sixth, you lose one of your players and a fan has to play with you. Nightmare. And you have to play him. That's pretty entertainment now. Anyway,
what position would you put a random fan on your team if you had to?
Oh, it has to be in the wing, though.
Left wing. Yeah.
Has to be left wing, yeah.
Left wing.
Yeah.
Or is the second... No, it was a second line player in a 7v6.
7 versus 6,
they would just get in the way. They'd get in the way too much. Has to be the left wing. Yeah.
It'd be sensational some season, though, when they've actually a good handball player who just gets in and then they actually sign him up then after the season. Has an absolute sensational. It'd be like America's Got Talent or something. It'd be class.
Well, that's like, have you ever seen Dream Team? You know, the football show? It was about Harchester United. And there was that whole story arc with the guy who was like giving abuse on the stands. So they're like, oh, in a preseason friendly. So they're like, yeah, you come in and show us what you can do. And he scores a goal. And then he gets a contract. And then, he ends up becoming the whole, like the chairman of the board or something.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying I'm onto something.
Anyway, yeah, you're onto something, Brian. This is a whole other episode of fantasy rules for the sport. Champions League. One question for you before we go really quick. But who's going to finish 6th in Group A? Zagreb, Płock, or Porto?
Zagreb.
Right.
Because I believe in the power of Timur Debirov.
You're probably right, actually. That's a tough one.
I'm going to say Płock.
What are Płock's last 2 games they're playing against?
At home to PSG and away to Porto. To Porto, they could win.
That's really tough.
Yeah.
I'll probably say it. I'll stick with Zagreb for the old heads, the old Champions League heads that are in there. We'll get it done.
I'll go for Płock then. Moving on, Women's Champions League. Brian, you've seen the most of it. You've been to a lot of Women's Champions League games recently.
I'm just trying to remember which ones I was at.
But the Women's Champions League, the group stage has finished. There was a pretty dramatic last day. It sealed a few fates. While you remember what games you went to, Brian, maybe I'll talk through what happened on the last day, especially in Group A. That was where the drama really happened on the last day. So CSM Bucharest were actually top in first place going into that last round. Vipers behind them, and at the bottom, Krim were on 10 points and looking like they were out. So Krim were playing CSM Bucharest. CSM needed a win to confirm first, but obviously finishing second still qualifies you for the quarterfinal. But Krim needed a win to even have a chance of going through. They were on 10 points, and the 2 teams ahead of them were Bietigheim and Brest. And they did it. They beat CSM Bucharest 28-26. Christine Niagu had a stinker of all stinkers. 6 goals from 15 shots for Niagu in that game. And Krim qualified because Brest Britannia lost to Vipers, who then claimed top spot. And Bietigheim, despite destroying Badik Most 47-25, didn't manage to leapfrog them. So big for Krim, bad for Bucharesti, but they do go through anyway to that quarterfinal. So see, drama can happen in these types of group stages, right?
Yeah, and I think a big takeaway for me from this is Bietigheim finishing in 7th place, because we had a check-in early in the competition, and we were so impressed with how strong Bietigheim were at the start of the season. But the big question was like whether they could keep it going because the squad was pretty thin, and whether injuries would kind of come back to haunt them. And boy, did it come back to haunt them. I think they went on a 6-game losing streak towards the end of the group, which it really sealed their fate. And it's a disaster for them to finish in 7th place. But interesting, it's happened in both groups that there's a huge block of teams very even on points. But here in Group A, from 3rd place down to 7th, just 4 points between them, which is a good sign in that sense, showing how the vast majority of teams were pretty close in this competition.
Not only that, but they also had 3 match of weeks in a row, which they all lost, which was kind of a strange curse on poor Big League time. So yeah, that's tough, like, because they were thereabouts in at least 2 of those games. The game against Vipers, they pushed Vipers pretty much all the way. It was a bit nip and tuck at home against Bucharesti, but then maybe, they really faded late in that second half against FTC. I was at that game. I remember. And, that's a tough out season for them, because when you think back, as you said, Chris, earlier in the season, when they went on that run, you're thinking, there's a new horse in town? No, a new, what's the phrase? I have to be careful what I'm saying here. And there's a new team in town.
Sheriff.
A new sheriff.
Is the one you're looking for.
Yes,
who sits on the horse. The sheriff comes in on the horse.
There's a new horse in town, and there's the sheriff on it.
There's a new horse in town riding the sheriff into town. Tough out season for them. But I'm really looking forward now to the playoffs, and I think we have some really, really tasty matchups there. I'm not sure. I'm looking at them here. We've Krim versus CS Rapid Bucharesti, Brest versus Team Esbjerg, Storhamar versus Odense, and Budućnost versus FTC. If you guys had to pick out one match which you think is going to be too hard to call, which one would you think would it be? Strangely enough, I think knowing FTC, I think it might be FTC Budućnost for some reason. Knowing how difficult they make life for themselves sometimes, there could be that one. But also I think Brest and Team Esbjerg is also quite good.
Krim Rapid Bucharesti feels like... I mean, remember, because you mentioned FTC last season. I remember Krim got the players that were released by the Russian clubs and stormed their way through to the quarterfinal at FTC's expense, which was a kind of a classic thing to happen to them. But Krim, coming from basically saving themselves from elimination and looking at the vast array of experience in that team, coming up against Rapid Bucharesti, who have been they've been the revelation. They have been the new horse with a sheriff coming into town in Group B. We're going to have to keep going with this now.
What an analogy. My God.
But Rapid Bucharesti have been very impressive, but they are maybe lacking a little bit of experience at this level. So I think the wily old foxes of Krim may be able to hunt down that horse.
But one thing you said about the Russian players, Krim, Daria Dmitrieva has been terrible. We know how good she can be, but even in that big win against CSM, Daria went 1 from 9. She's struggling.
That one goal was a very important goal, is what I'll say. It was a very important goal. So she kept going. She kept plugging away. But yeah, that wasn't her best day at the office, for sure. But she has also, let's not forget, in the 4 games prior to that, she scored 3 against Vipers, 9 against Most, 10 against FTC, and 12 against Bietigheim. So Mr. Alex, looking at the most recent results, Gulesh here, being found out.
It was the last two. The 3-goal performance was also bad.
Yeah, but come on,
3 from like 8 or something.
Yeah, but
right?
31 goals in 3 games before that. Let's give her a break, Alex, shall we? I know, high standards for the Russian
High
players.
standards. Expect a lot from Dmitriev. She's one of my favorite players.
You're always tough on the Russians anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, in Group B as well, there was a big game at the end as well, and that was Gjør beating Team Esbjerg to seal that second position in the group and push Esbjerg down into the playoffs. So Esbjerg are they're probably too good to be in the playoffs for me, and they're playing a Brest team that have been so impressive for many years, but just don't look the same this year. And when you asked that question, Brian, that game immediately shot to mind, because that, to me, that's almost a Final Four game. It could easily be that if you're just look at it at a glance. But with the way Brest have performed this season, I think it will be an easy win for Esbjerg. But it still interests me, and I think that'll be a good one. Gjør beat Esbjerg 31-29 in that decisive game. And Henny Reistad, who has been terrible in this competition, went 2 from 8.
Alex, what are you talking about?
Based on the last game's performance, she has been... No, of course.
I wouldn't be totally... I wouldn't hang out my boots. Jeez, I can't think of any phrases today. Any idioms at all. I wouldn't totally give up on Brest just yet. So at the moments I saw them this season, they definitely have a big fight about them. And the only games they really kind of got snowballed in were perhaps the 2 games against Vipers, or maybe that earlier game in the season against CSM Bucharest. But the rest of the games, they were really in all of them, and some of them lost them really, really narrowly. So I think they're a dangerous team for anyone to come up against, because unless you're Vipers, you're not going to run them over. And I think they do have, with a character like Georgina Jankovic in there, who can be a little bit up and down herself.
She's injured. I was just going to say.
That is also a big one.
I forgot about that,
So
she got an injury which keep her out for about 3 months. It's another knee injury, but not as traumatic as her last ones.
And Cleopatra Darlo is out with a concussion for the foreseeable future. So that's a pretty nightmare situation for them in that sense. But they're going to need a lot of fight.
Yeah, and they have it.
So I think overall, the playoff picture is looking pretty good. Storhamar Odense, I think, is maybe the clearest one there in favour of Odense. Storhamar, I think, are going to be counting their lucky stars. They weren't in Group A. Otherwise, I don't think they would have been at this stage. So, yeah, good for them that they're in this round. But Odense will be looking pretty good. And just like projecting forward a little bit here to the quarterfinals, I want to get your takes on this. So, winner of Storhamar Odense faces Gjør, which shows just how big that victory over Esbjerg was for Gjør, because they get potentially the nicest quarter of the draw. Krim Rapid, the winner of that, faces Vipers. Budućnost FTC, the winner of that, faces Metz, which Metz have been incredible this season. They just going from strength to strength. But this is the standout quarter of the draw for me. The winner of Brest Esbjerg, so let's say Esbjerg are the favourites there, against CSM Bucharesti. Esbjerg against CSM, Henny Reistad against Niagu, and all the other stars. That is a quarter-final worth watching out for.
Lining up really nicely. Yeah. I think there's a lot of great games to come, and no clear favourite like we always have with Gjør. Or Vipers, you know, 2-time reigning champions Vipers. But what makes Metz so good this season? What has impressed you about them?
I think the goalkeeper duo has been really good. 2 kind of rising stars for the French national team. Camille Despouzet and Hadidou Sakho, both really good. And then it's what a backcourt with Bruna Cipolla in there alongside Louise Borgard, and you have Christina Jorgensen in there, who has come to life. 62 goals. She's found kind of prolific scoring that we hadn't really seen from her at national team level. And Chloe Valentini as well has been brilliant out on the left wing. I think she also has 62 goals. So they just look like a really solid outfit. They had like 2 seasons where it was a bit of transition for the team. It was completely rebuilt basically from the bottom up by Emmanuel Mayanad. We saw them close to the top last season, but now it seems like everything is just where it needs to be, and everyone looking pretty fit as well, on the line as well. Bouktit, is that how you say her name?
I hope so.
Sarah Bouktit, really brilliant as well. So yeah, just a bunch of really good players. They're athletic, they're smart, brilliant confidence, playing good handball. I don't know what the secret is, but it looks good.
I just personally like the kind of mix between experienced players and younger players in it. And I think there's a balance you get when you get that right. And with a team like Metz, with a good handball club like Metz, I think it's a dangerous mix. And I love in your commentary also, Chris, how you really go for the Buna Jibaula. I did notice that.
That's for Marcio. That's Marcio Menino's teachings. You know.
Yeah, yes.
He goes. He's giving me all the knowledge I need for Brazilian players.
But you're going to win the whole thing anyway, right?
Yeah, of course. Anyway, moving on.
On that, I think we joked about it. We joked about it, but Amandine Lenoir is back.
Yeah.
Yes, because Solberg is pregnant and Amandine Lenoir, well, she's back in goal. So why not? What a story that'll be, and not surprising in the slightest.
How long was she out in total?
Only this season.
Yeah. So in terms of a bit of ring rust, like I think probably not that much of it for a goalkeeper like that. You can pretty much slot straight back in, can't you?
Yeah. She's been a goalkeeper coach. She's probably she's been on the court.
Yeah. I mean, we saw with France at the Euro how active she was as well. Like she was definitely doing a little bit of training as well, I'd say. Arpad Sterback vibes, isn't it?
Yeah, except without the limp. Danish Cup, Alex. You were watching the whole thing?
Danish Cup. I did say I was going to gush about GOG, and I'm going to do it again because those boys are just fantastic. I did watch just the 2 GOG games, and I got full confirmation that it can be either GOG or GOG. So both is right. Choose what you will.
What do you prefer?
I'll stick.
Yeah.
I like GOG.
Yeah.
I like GOG. It has a nice ring to it.
GOG sounds like you don't know what you're talking about. Sounds like something else. Anyway, tell us why you like it. What you liked in this season anyway.
So GOG won the Santander Final Four Cup in Denmark, which is a competition that's been kind of rising over the last couple of years. It's been getting a lot more attention, a lot more publicity, and even without Aalborg in the competition, in the Final Four this year, they were still able to get 9,000 people, close to 9,000 people in the Jyske Bank Boxen arena. And that's because they actually limited it to that number of seats. So big competition. It was in the semi-final, GOG played Björn Borg Silkeborg, and in the other semi-final, Skjern played Ribe Esbjerg. Skjern flew through Ribe. There was no real challenge for them in that semi-final, but the semi-final between GOG and Björn Borg Silkeborg was an absolute barnstormer. Finished 36-35 to GOG, and the last couple of minutes were just a real riot of a game. It kind of went wild. It was great to see. Throughout the game, GOG were in a lot of control. They were just taking it easy. Not taking it easy, but they were comfortably 2 or 3 goals in the lead. Björnberg not in it at all, or staying in it a little bit. And it was the last 6 minutes where just things shifted, and Björn Borg got a couple of goals back. It was 32-32, and then Simon Putlik, who was fantastic in that game, got a 2 minutes. So with 4 minutes left, 2 of those minutes were going to be without Putlik. They were level on score, and it looked like GOG were about to throw it away. But there was this just I'm the boss moment from Putlik. So he went off for his 2 minutes. The game went on. It was 33 when he came back in. Scored 2 absolutely crucial goals to put them up in the game. And then it was Morten Olsen who came in with the Danish 5-step, a real veteran, to close out the game.
Yeah, and Martin Olsen off to become an assistant coach next season in Ringstedt. So he'll be spreading the word of GOG and the GOG 5-step all around Europe. So fair play to him. More of it.
Yeah.
But what really kind of stood out to me was that this whole GOG team is just full of clutch players. You know, what I talked about earlier about DKM not having that. Each one of those backcourt players just does. It was Emil Madsen who, when GOG kind of got shocked by Björn Borg and they came back into it, he just took 2 standing shots from 9 meters, 1 rocket in top corner, 1 down low. And it was just like, yeah, no, I've got this. Then Putlik came back in and he scored his 2 goals because he was like, no, I've got this. And then Morten Olsen with his 6 steps to seal it, which was pretty ridiculous that it wasn't called. He was being tackled during those steps, and maybe the refs. It's the some of the best refs in the world in Denmark. They thought he took a bounce, but he didn't. I don't know why VR wasn't used. It was pretty dramatic, and in the end, it was a dropped ball from a Sukkerborg player that closed the game out. But again, what stood out just how clutch these guys are. They're just not afraid of anything. And then in the final, it was actually pretty straightforward. They played against Skjern, who have a very nice team. Actually, they've collected a bunch of nice players. They have Alfred Jönsson in the center, Swedish playmaker with experience from the Bundesliga. Senjamin Buric on the line. Also Bergholt, another upcoming Danish line player, had a good Final Four. But they weren't good enough. And it was actually Lucas Jørgensen who was the star of the final. He got 8 goals from 10 shots. And yeah, his movement is just fantastic, Jørgensen. On air, he was asked a few times whether he's moving to Flensburg or what his next club is. He said he's focusing on his handball this season, but I think it's pretty clear that he's going to be Flensburg's line player for next season. And what a player he is! He really absolutely out of nowhere, like literally out of nowhere. We knew a little bit about Putlik. Jørgensen just really stepped up. He was behind Bergendahl last season. This season, he's taken his chance. And yes, Skjern just weren't really in the game. And I was talking to Rasmus a little bit after that game. He was potentially going to come on this podcast to chat about it, give that Skjern perspective. He said that GOG were just the better team. I said they're really special this year. But he said they're pretty good, but not special. So maybe we'll ask Rasmus another time why he doesn't think they're special. I think this is a really special team.
Just before it gets called out on Twitter by John Ryan on Team Handball News, Alfred Jönsson, yes, he could also potentially play for the USA. But still sticking with Sweden for now. I'm sorry about that, John. Other big news, Borussia Dortmund getting 11,112 spectators to fill out the Westfalenhalle in Dortmund, the most at a women's club match in Germany and the most in a European League match. It was the group final in the European League against Schaffhock, which they won 26-23. And looking at the pictures and the highlights from that, you can see that it was a great atmosphere. And fair play to Borussia Dortmund. Also on the back of like what has been a terrible few months for them, with the former coach being kicked out disgracefully for his abuse allegations, that they've managed to get the public behind him like this. And a great occasion, it seemed like, for them. Incredible, because when you see Borussia Dortmund in the last couple of years, when they played in the Champions League, playing in this poxy hall with like a running track around it and about 500 people watching, to getting over 11,000 in for a game like that is, you just have to doff your cap to them.
Yeah, and then, I mean, not even that, also to watch that game in that arena, in their old arena, the camera was also so low when you'd watch it on EHF TV. It's almost so unsatisfying to watch because you couldn't really see what was going on in certain parts of the court. So it was a mess. But yeah, great to see the images of that arena. I was working yesterday on the European League, the games, and I was just a bit annoyed that we didn't get a big wide angle shot of the arena. I felt like they could have made a bit more of that, and they didn't really seem to push that out there. But an incredible number of spectators. Shame the game didn't mean something. I mean, it did mean something, but they wanted to finish top of the group. But shame there wasn't like their progression on the line, as it were, because they were going to finish first or second regardless. But yeah, good to see it. I mean, and going on with the scandal, things are bad as well when the football fans get involved to put pressure on the handball team to get rid of your man. So it's a big deal when that happens. But what a year for them.
And German teams love the European League. We knew that about the men's side, but now it's a fact in the women's side as well, because Bietigheim winning it last season, and 3 German teams into the quarterfinal of that one. So the quarterfinals for it are Schofok against ECAST, Valtia against Nyköping, also 2 Danish teams in there, Sola against Thüringer HC, and Nantes against Dortmund. There's only 2 German teams in there. I don't know where I got 3 from.
Yeah. I was trying to count them. I was like, what's wrong with my brain?
I still love it. Still 2 German teams equals loving the European League. Also, just to mention, we, I think, tweeted it out earlier last week. Also the devastating news of Kemal Kutaya from Turkey, who was one of the, I think now tens of thousands of people, he and his family, who have died after the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. Kemal was a bit of a legend in Turkish handball, captain of the indoor team, top scorer in the beach handball Euro the last 2 times, 2019 and 2021. His pregnant wife, his child and mother-in-law, all being found, I think, was it a week later, which it just gives a bit of a glimpse into how terrible all of that has been. Also mentioned that a teammate of his and one of the more prominent Turkish handball players, Doruk Pehlivan, has been on Twitch over the last couple of weeks, raising funds for the victims by painting and drawing some posters. So check him out. I think it's DORS19, so Dorsh 19. Hopefully he'll be online again at some point. So go and check that out and donate if you can. Some positive news to finish off. An international club title for Ireland. We have to mention this. The first ever Celtic Cup Final Four is happening over the weekend in Scotland, with 2 Irish teams and 2 Scottish teams competing in the men and women, and it was double gold for Dublin City handball. So congratulations to them. It was an all-Irish women's final with Dublin City beating Astra and Dublin City beating Livingston in the men's competition. So that's it. We're on the rise. Next stop, European Cup. Round 2.
Good stuff. That's it for today's episode. I presume there's nothing else to say. The boys look quiet when you're scraping the barrel with wins with Irish teams. The time is up. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Thank you all to our Patreon subscribers, and we'll see you next time for another episode of the Uniformed Handball Hour. Cheerio.